Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic, and today I'm going to be talking about this most recent article from Scott Mendelson, our buddy, our boy Scott Mendelson over at Forbes, who has just been, in a lot of people's minds, just trolling the fan base when it comes to talking about Solo, a Star Wars story, as well as many other things. This is the guy that made that article not too long ago where he talked about how maybe, just maybe, the reason why these films, specifically Solo, isn't doing well is because it just has a generic white male lead, and no one wants to actually see that. Well, yeah, unfortunately, there are so many movies. I know, for example, World Class BSers said this last night on their live stream. What about James Bond? How do you explain that one? James Bond does extremely well, and yet he is a white male lead. But that's besides the point. But anyway, so that's who we're dealing with here. So Scott Mendelson. So right now we have an article. This was posted earlier today, and it says terrible box office for Solo is great news for Star Wars. Really. I don't really quite understand that. I guess I can kind of see the point if he's trying to say that this movie was so bad that Disney decides to get rid of Kathleen Kennedy and all those people in charge of Lucasfilm and put in charge instead people who actually like Star Wars and actually love Star Wars and will actually make good Star Wars films. If that's what he's saying, then absolutely, you're absolutely correct, Scott. But I have a feeling that that's not what he's actually saying here. So let's dive into his article here. So he says the predictions and guesstimates for how far Walt Disney's Solo Star Wars story will fall over its opening weekend are varied. I've seen anywhere from 50 million plus second weekend, which is a drop of 42%, to a 25 million second weekend, a drop of 69%. So I actually did a video on this where I broke down the numbers, and I said if you give this film a generous 50% drop, or rather a generous 40% drop, including worldwide total. So he is just here talking about as far as a local, a domestic total, but for the worldwide total, 40% drop would mean a estimate of 68 million for the weekend, and that's being very generous. I probably would say that it's likely going to be closer to that 50% range, but we'll actually see what's happening. In fact, it's going to be very interesting to see because you just had the recent numbers from Box Office Mojo that came out too, where it says right here, Solo is expected to make 30 million, and that is just here domestically, which means that abroad, foreign markets will probably only bring in about 20 to 29 million dollars. So if that foreign market number does not hold up, then it could be really bad. We could see it closer to that 60-69% drop that he put in here. All right, if I had to make a prediction under a penalty of death, wow, that's quite extreme, Scott. I don't think anyone wants to think about that. So don't say stuff like that. That's not nice. I'd say a 55% drop, which is on par with recent Memorial Day openers. And again, I would say that's fair. I would say that closer to 50-55%. But if that is the case, he's not taking into account what the foreign markets will say. So that's really awful overall. If it's a 55% drop total, both foreign and domestic, that is awful. And then he says it's 160 million 10-day total. So over 2 weeks, that would mean that this film will barely make $450 million, which would be a loss of around $200 to $250 million, depending on how much it costs and also depending on how much the movie ends up making by the end of its run. So yeah, not looking good for them. But anyway, he said terrible box office. This is great for Star Wars. So still trying to see where he's going with this overall story. So he says that wouldn't be a great look for Disney's newest Star Wars movie, even if it weren't being ignored overseas, which it is. It may not be bad news for Star Wars or Lucasfilm. Maybe not the people in charge of Lucasfilm. I think it's pretty bad for them, but if you're trying to say that this means that they're going to be gone and that we're going to have a good film, then yeah, you'd be right, but let's see where he's going. In fact, from a certain viewpoint, I might argue that the financial failure is excellent news for fans who want better or at least different Star Wars films. Okay, I can agree with that, but again, that all really depends on what Disney decides to do with people like Kathleen Kennedy, what they decide to do with Rian Johnson and his upcoming trilogy. Again, these are the kinds of things that will have a profound impact. All right. So then he mentions Lord Miller, talks about 70-85% of the movie was a financial that reshooting that much was a financial mistake. Well, yeah, that's the reason why people like Kathleen Kennedy need to go, because she greenlit that and she allowed that to actually happen, where the $200 million budget that it probably started off with was probably ballooned to $250 to $300 million budget, which is just insane for a film where you pay that much more just to have reshoots and to not only have reshoots, but also to give a terrible crap product at the very end of it. Because that's the whole reason why this film is failing. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's a white male lead or anything like that. It's because it was not that great of a film. It was an okay film. Again, I gave it a C in my review, but also there is a fan backlash that's been going on since The Last Jedi, and this is something that people still, to this day, still ignore. But, you know, if people like John Campea can turn around, maybe we start to see people like Scott Mendelson here. Maybe he'll turn around as well. All right, like WB's post-Batman v Superman decision to bring in Joss Whedon to redirect. Okay, yeah, well, that didn't really work too well for them. That increased their balloon costs, and that film didn't hit $1 billion. So yeah, so I don't really know what he's trying to say there. Let's just so he's just basically talking about how all the different Star Wars, we may wonder if Gareth Edwards or Lord and Miller's first versions of their respective Star Wars stories would have been better films, or at least unique unto themselves. And okay, all right, so what we're trying to say here, the other reason as to why Solo's box office whiff may appear good news is a little bit simpler. If you treat this like Incredible Hulk, first and only flop, depends on how you define flop. Again, it didn't make a crap ton of money, but I don't really think it lost a hell of a lot of money either. But I'll have to look back at the numbers to make sure that that's actually accurate. All right, so what does this mean? Well, you might see big studios striking out for the first time via films that, while relatively okay or good, represent a certain cynical or safe approach. Okay, so this is where I really get into what he is actually saying. He is saying his argument here as to why this is good is because he says that Solo failed because it was a safe movie. And he goes on to really hit this home towards the very end, where he says that the failure is a sign that failure of Solo is a sign that audiences, be they Star Wars fans or casual goers, want their big movies to be a little less run-of-the-mill. It's good news for folks who want Star Wars movies that, well, explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and new civilizations, boldly go where no Jedi has gone before. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Oh, that's fantastic. That's hilarious. Scott, that's fantastic. I'll have to give you a like on your Twitter, because that last line is just really, really funny. But no, he goes on just to say that that's the reason why this failed, is because it was a generic film. And again, don't get me wrong, it is a generic film, and that's probably why a lot of people aren't going to see it, but he's ignoring the elephant in the room. He's ignoring the fact that it's because of fans, and because of the fact that people overseas, this is really where we can see this argument really start to take hold. If you look at the raw numbers, if you look at the numbers for all the Star Wars films since The Force Awakens came out, you see a tremendous drop. Again, Force Awakens made $2 billion. Last Jedi made $1.3 billion. So yeah, it made a lot of money, but it lost $700 million, and it made around over 60%. It made 67% of its total profit in its first 2 weeks. That means that people stopped going to see it. That means that the people overseas were not very impressed by it and didn't want to go see it either. And now we see with Solo the same thing happening. Because again, when have you ever seen this happen, where a movie makes domestically more than the foreign market? That is very rare for a big budget film. Almost every big budget film has a higher foreign market because it's a bigger market. There's more people, so it makes a lot of sense. This is the first film in a long time, at least this kind of a big budget Star Wars film, where we've seen this discrepancy happen. And so how can you just ignore the fact that, no, this is not good for Star Wars, Scott Mendelson. This is not good for Star Wars if they keep us on the same direction. Now, if they change things up, if they bring in people who actually like Star Wars, if they bring in people who actually want to see the Star Wars universe expand and succeed and make good films, because that's all we want. That's all we really want. We just want good films. We don't want the nonsense going on behind the scenes. We don't want the writers of Solo coming out and saying, "Oh yeah, Lando's pansexual." Yeah, we don't care about that. We don't want that. We want good films. We don't care. We want good films. It does not matter who is the lead. I said this in a previous video. It does not matter who is the lead. It doesn't matter if they are a woman, if they are white, if they are black. It does not matter. Again, most people do not care about that. Most people care about one thing. Is it a good movie? And then secondary to that, is it worth my money? That's what we care about. It has nothing to do with, it's a generic film. That's why it's flopping. And it's good because this loss, which is going to be $150 million to $300 million for Disney, that's a good thing, because that means we're going to get more films that are taking more risk and are not run-of-the-mill. Okay, well, that's all fine and dandy as long as people like Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson aren't making those films. Because if they make those films, you're going to see this movie drop even more. Again, I said this on Twitter just recently. Episode 9, if it keeps going on the current trend, if Star Wars Last Jedi only made $1.3 billion, and that was a $700 million loss compared to Force Awakens, if you see a very similar loss for this film, especially if the boycott continues, because that's another thing that they don't want to acknowledge, that the boycott actually had an effect, because keep in mind that most of the people who are boycotting this film are the ones who are the hardcore fans who will go see a movie opening night, who will go and see a movie multiple times in theaters, and they are not showing up. And that is shown to have a very profound effect. Now, are there other factors? Absolutely. But that is still a major factor that people are just ignoring. So we have to keep that in mind, that if this continues, if they continue to go in this direction, if Kathleen Kennedy and all those people in charge of Lucasfilm continue in this direction to make really crappy films, to crap all over Star Wars, to all over the universe, then no, this is not going to be good for Star Wars. In fact, this might be the end of Star Wars, or the beginning of the end of Star Wars, if they don't make a major change. So again, if they make that change happen, well then yeah, this could very well be good, because if this could be good, if this means Kathleen Kennedy goes, if this means that Rian Johnson does not get his trilogy, if it means that all these other people who are in charge of Lucasfilm, who are bringing it in this direction, go away, then yeah, then it would be a good thing, Scott Mendelson. So yes, so thank you for this article, Scott. But again, I think you, like usual, I feel like you missed the mark. And of course, you throw in your goodies. So if you want to check this out, again, this is Forbes.com, Scott Mendelson. It's the most recent article from today. You can read the rest of it for yourself. But yeah, he has some interesting thing to say. And once again, just that ending is just absolutely fantastic. Again, where he says, to seek out new life and new civilizations, boldly go where no Jedi has gone before. I really appreciate that Star Trek reference in a Star Wars article. Again, yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm going to give you a like on Twitter for that, though. But guys, if you like what you saw here, please give me a thumbs up. Please give me a subscribe. I very much appreciate it. And again, stay tuned for the next bit of Scott Mendelson news, because we love talking about this guy. Again, obviously he loves talking about things that we care about, and hopefully he wises up soon, just like John Campea, and hopefully like Lucasfilm if they fire Kathleen Kennedy. So guys, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day as always, and God bless.